There it is. We are live. Welcome, everybody. We have an awesome guest. We are going to talk about sharing stories and potentially, hopefully, you will want to join a book club by the end of this because we're excited about it. All right, here we go. Let's jump in. Let's have
Practicing Polyamory, real-life perspectives from the imperfect people of polyamory. The mission of the Practicing Polyamory podcast is to provide a platform for all of the real-life, flawed humans that practice polyamory so that we might all learn from one another and grow as a community. Enjoy the show.
All right. Y'all know that music gets me dancing. Welcome to this beautiful Tuesday. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome and thanks for tuning in. And if you've been here for a while, you already know that we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. 3 opportunities every week for you to ask questions. So if you have any questions about your relationships or if there's a topic you'd like to hear discussed on the show, slide into my DMs, let me know, or leave a comment while we're recording live. Follow the show on all social media platforms at Practicing Poly and let me know what it is that you want us to talk about. And as always, I want to remind you, if you are listening to this podcast, you are a welcome guest to be on this show. None of us are perfect, and we are here to share our imperfect stories because the more stories we share, the more others will see us in themselves, and the more representation we have, the more we can strengthen our community. So go to practicingpolyamory.com, sign up to share your imperfect story too. All right, everybody, here we go. Introducing our guest. I have got to step my game up for this intro because today's guest isn't just a fellow writer. She is an exceptional storyteller who believes that polyamory is inextricable from her identity, and that has made her passionate about visibility and representation. Our guest has been published in a number of literary and commercial outlets on a wide range of topics, including polyamory, makes sense, and opening their marriage, queerness, ethnic identity, and dementia. I don't know if you all realize it, but getting published as a literary means our guest has done more research, learning, reading, and sharing of information along her journey than the average person, and she's probably forgotten more than I currently know. So I'm excited to get to learn from her today. Although her breakout poly blog is currently on hold, our guest's mission hasn't missed a beat. She continues to contribute to the polyam community by being publicly out and unabashedly herself in the hopes that she can remove the stigma around our relationship styles and help other poly folks feel less alone. So join us today as we share our stories, struggles, and victories as we hope that you may find companionship and affirmation beyond physical spaces. Joining us today from Poly in Place and Poly Pages, welcome to the show, Krista, Varela, Posell. Krista, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, good. I'm excited to have you and learn from you because holy crap, a literary, you've read all these books. You've got your master's in creative writing. Forgot to mention that. And here you are. You're starting it. Let's just jump right into starting this book club. Tell me about this book club that you're starting and kind of the journey that got you to where you are starting this book club.
Sure. So to talk about the book club, first, I have to give a little bit of background on my work with Claire, who runs the platform over at Poly Pages. So last year, I co-created with my polycule at the time a community blog platform called Poly in Place. That was kind of our pandemic project and something that really helped the 8 of us at the time really get through the difficulties of 2020. And so at the end of last year, some of the relationships within that polycule transitioned as they do. And I was trying to figure out what to do with Poly in Place next and was kind of in this place where I wasn't sure where to go with it. And I had been following what Claire was doing over at Poly Pages for a while. She was kind of building her platform at the same time. And I noticed she was starting to do events. And so I had listened in, I think, for one of her first events on decoupling and polyamory, and just really appreciated the way that she put a panel together and was asking really thoughtful and interesting questions of her panelists. And it really got me thinking about the ways that her interests and my interests align. And so I had reached out to her with an idea about polyamory in literature and doing an event all around polyamory in literature, because it's such an underrepresented, relationship style. Whenever you see non-monogamy in books, it's usually in the form of cheating or infidelity. And I was really interested in exploring that topic more widely, and why aren't there more polyamorous characters in literature? Why don't we see more memoirs by polyamorous writers? So that was kind of my initial outreach to Claire, and at the beginning of the year, we started talking about this event, which we both got really excited about. And it was in the process of developing the idea for that event that we started talking about an actual book club. We wanted to go further than just offering this one-off event. We really wanted to develop a partnership and work together on something that, in her own research, the community has been asking for.
Right.
So we started to develop this book club, which over the next year we are going to read four titles with the support of Thorn Tree Press. So the first title that we have set to start in October is Polysecure by Jessica Fern, and we'll be reading a few others that have been put out by Thorn Tree. And so once a quarter, we as a community are going to focus on reading these titles that have sort of, shaped the poly community and culture, and explore them further, and offer support to folks who are really just looking to get more engaged with the community and learn more about polyamory.
There is going to be so much opportunity to learn with the two of you. I know that polyamory in literature, that is 100% Claire's bag, and obviously yours as well. Let's dive into a little bit of that, because I mean, you have written so much of your own stuff about polyamory, about opening up your relationship, about queerness. What are some of the books that have inspired you and your writing?
Oh, that's a great question. I should have been prepared for this one. And it's hard because there are so many books that I'm influenced by, and just as a writer, I'm always kind of looking at everything to see what can I learn from this, even if it's something that has nothing to do with my own experience. I'm always looking for craft elements, like, oh, it's really interesting the way that this writer wrote this scene. Going back to grad school, there was a book that I read called The Boys of My Youth by Joanne Beard, and there's an essay where she writes from the point of view of a coyote, and so like just even that kind of opened my eyes to the different ways that we can tell stories. And so, some of them have nothing to do with polyamory, the books that have made the biggest impact on me, but just books that have had really solid storytelling. I'm in the middle of a book right now called Blow Your House Down by Gina Frangello, who is the nonfiction editor at the LA Review of Books. And she is writing about infidelity within her own marriage, and the way in which it changed her entire life. It changed the trajectory of this decades-long marriage that she had been in, and the ways in which she realized all of these different desires and things within herself that she hadn't been able to explore. And so I'm always looking for ways that people are just open and vulnerable. And I think in this book in particular, it's a difficult subject talking about infidelity, especially when
Right.
you are the adulterer. But she has done it in such a way that I'm just in awe at the way that she has put herself out there and really laid
Wow.
herself bare for her readers. So that's one that I'm particularly taken with at the moment.
Gotta love that vulnerability. As you're talking, there's one author that I'm thinking of, Anais Nin, I think is her
Mhm.
name. Have you heard that one? Yeah, you're obviously familiar. There's definitely a lot of multi-partner relationships in her writings. So I've kind of enjoyed that one. Um, when it comes to telling stories and these books that you've read that maybe they weren't necessarily polyamorous books, but you found a lot of value in them. I want to kind of go back to like who you were and how you kind of came into polyamory. You know, when it comes to like the stuff that you've read, did you ever find yourself when you were younger reading books like, I'm just going to throw this one out there, Twilight, where you've got the love triangle? Were you the type of person that was like, oh, she should just love them both, or were you like programmed monogamy like the rest of us?
Yeah, for me, it was definitely more of the latter. I came to polyamory very late in my life, and it wasn't something that, as a young person, I never really thought, oh, there is something, wrong about the way that we just default to monogamy.
Hmm.
I didn't grow up with polyamory even on my radar. I grew up in a somewhat conservative area. Like, I grew up in Arizona, and
Hmm.
and so, now comparing that to where I live now, which is San Francisco and the Bay Area, some place that has, a lot of diversity, just not only in terms of, non-monogamy, but just people in general.
Right.
Though those sorts of things weren't available to me at growing up. And so I actually didn't consider myself to be polyamorous until about 2 years ago.
Hmm.
And I married my high school sweetheart. We got together when we were 16, 17 years old and had a mostly monogamous relationship throughout our late teens and early 20s. We had a couple of threesomes here and there. We had issues with infidelity on and off throughout our relationship. I think because neither of us had the language to be able to communicate around desires, around wanting other people.
Hmm.
That's just something that we didn't know how to do. And so we had always kind of been curious about an open relationship, but didn't really have the tools to be able to make it work. And so once we both finished with school, we took some time to really think about what we wanted out of our relationship. And it was at this point that we started going to couples therapy together. Not because
Were you married by then?
yeah,
Okay, you were married already.
we'd been married for about 2 years, a little over 2 years by the time we decided to open up. And so we went to couples therapy just as a sort of safety net, a place to sort of work through a lot of the things that we were questioning, and wanted a space to be able to process all of the changes throughout our relationship that came along with opening up. And so, I think for my husband, it was a very easy transition for him to say, okay, I'm going from this married, mostly monogamous relationship to now being poly. Whereas for me, it took a lot longer to kind of feel comfortable inhabiting that identity, because I'd never had any other relationships,
Right.
any other serious relationships, and so we sort of took our time. We dipped our toes in. We started more kind of as swingers at first, and quickly realized that we both wanted more emotional connections to the other people that we were seeing, and so we wound up in more of a polyamorous space. But it took a long time for me, even after we had decided that we were poly, for me to feel comfortable saying I'm poly. And
Yeah,
I
by my math, it's like 10 years.
Yeah, we were together by 12 years at that point.
Okay. So I'm trying to get the timeline right. So by the time you started couples therapy, you were 2 years married,
Mhm. 2 years
and
married, 12 years together. So,
okay. I get it. I'm following now. All right. So 2 questions then for you. First of all, did you specifically go after and find a poly or non-monogamy affirming therapist?
we did. Yeah, we had a couple of things on our list that we were looking for in a therapist. We wanted to make sure that we found somebody who was knowledgeable and friendly towards, alternative lifestyles. And for us, that not only included non-monogamy, but somebody who was also knowledgeable in psychedelics. Because for us,
Mhm.
we had sort of gotten turned on to psychedelics at this time when we were sort of questioning, what we wanted our relationship to look like. And it was psychedelics that really helped us open our minds to the possibility that we can have a successful marriage and a successful relationship without sexual exclusivity. And so we wanted somebody who was familiar in that language and had those experiences to be able to talk with us about all of that. So we were very intentional about the therapist that we were looking for.
Nice.
Skills I've acquired over a very long career.
They gotta work for that one. They gotta work for that. It's not a certification, but to be able to help somebody in that situation, because it's so easy. The conversation I was having with the therapist yesterday, it's so easy for therapists to just pathologize and say, oh well, yeah, that's obviously the issue is your non-monogamy. You gotta be monogamous. But I'm glad that you didn't have to suffer through that. The other question that I had for you was, what was the first book that you picked up to start learning to start learning more about non-monogamy, polyamory, all this stuff?
Um, well, the first book that we both picked up was actually Esther Perel's The State of Affairs, which seems like kind of a weird way to get into that. But at the time, my husband and I were working through some infidelity issues,
Mhm.
and it was her book. I know that she, first came on the scene with Mating in Captivity, and that also has had a really important place within the non-monogamous community. But it was actually The State of Affairs that really helped reframe monogamy just completely, and what a successful relationship can look like. And so it was that book that sort of helped us work through our previous issues with infidelity, and really helped both of us kind of reframe what it was that we wanted in our relationship. And that gave us kind of a jumping off point to be able to have conversations, and then to look for these other texts. I think the one that we read after that was Opening Up, which um, provides a lot of different options. It kind of lays everything out there for people to show that non-monogamy can exist in a variety of ways, and it's all
Mhm.
about finding the one that works for you.
Definitely. All kinds of different non-monogamy formats, all kinds of different ways that people do polyamory, even all kinds of different ways. And opening up kind of gives a spectrum. Is that what you're saying? That it talks about a lot of different options as far
Mhm.
as the format or style of relationship?
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. So when it comes to reframing monogamy, the state of affairs, that was the thing that stood out to me. You said that it helped you to reframe monogamy. What exactly does that mean, and how did that book help you to do that?
I think before that point, I was sort of this mindset that like an affair was an I think Dan Savage calls it a relationship extinction level event.
Hmm.
And I thought this is something that people you just can't get past. Like if somebody's cheating on you, then like that just means you should break up. And so we were really at this point in our marriage where breaking up could have been on the table,
Right.
but we had been together for so long and we'd grown up together. We'd been through so much since we were teenagers that, neither of us wanted to throw in the towel. And so it was that book that helped me see that, yeah, infidelity can be a relationship game changer, but it doesn't have to be something that ends relationships. And she writes about all the different couples that she's worked with, and just kind of seeing all of the different stories of the ways that people used a traumatic relationship event like that to be able to build something better from it was really eye-opening for me. I'm not going to get the line right, but there's a line in the book where she's talking about how she frames this with the couples that she works with, and she tells them something like, "Your first marriage is over. How do you want your second one to begin?" And that was a really impactful line for both of us, because it was like, yeah, we are sort of leaving behind this idea of the relationship that we had, but now we have an opportunity to start over and build a better one, and build a more intentional one. And that was really a pivotal moment for both of us.
I don't know if you have it pending, but here we go.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
That right there, that was what I was. There's a chance. There's hope for people that have suffered, infidelity, like you're talking about, and the state of affairs. Now I get it, right? Now I get it. The state of affairs that can definitely help somebody who's in that situation. I forgot where I was going to go with that, but that's okay. Okay, so these are just some of the books that you've read, some of the books that you've gone that you've gone through. We're going to be looking at Polysecure for the book club that's coming up in October. Have you read that one already? I don't know, how many times have you read it?
I've started it. Yeah. So right now I'm working my way through it in anticipation of the book club that's starting up. But I've had friends who've read it, and I'm just really excited to dive deeper into it. It's one of those titles that has come up. It was published almost a year ago now, but I'm seeing it frequently, referred to in different poly discussion groups and just all over, where people are asking, what are some resources? What's a book I can read that can really help me in my poly journey? And that one comes up quite often. So I'm excited to dive into that one first.
Nice. And what about your Poly in Place, some of the work that you've done there? I want to ask you, I know that you have the project on hold, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about that work as well. One of the things that I saw was that you're creating a community where people can share stories, which, I mean, that's, like I said, this is a big reason why I started this podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience with that project, some of the stories that you heard, some of the ways that you were able to help people, so just kind of what you were doing in that project and how you were building community there?
Sure. So Poly in Place, like I mentioned before, it was a pandemic project with me and my polycule at the time. And so Poly in Place was sort of a play on the word shelter in place.
Right.
And so we were meeting up weekly on Zoom and just kind of like talking about our experiences throughout the pandemic. We were all feeling sort of disoriented and lost. And especially as polyamorous people, being removed from all of our different relationships was really difficult. And so we were talking about and wondering, how are other poly people coping with this? And so that was sort of the impetus for creating the blog. And so for a good chunk of 2020, we started building this website. We were writing these blog posts that were essentially just writing stories about our experiences in quarantine and how we were all coping with the pandemic. And sort of the vision for it was to have multiple people contribute to it outside of our polycule.
Mm-hmm.
So when we launched it, we had hoped that people would be submitting their own stories, and so once we finally launched it, we found that people were really resonating with the things that we were posting, and we were sharing that on social media, but we weren't quite getting people anxious to submit. It's really hard to put yourself out there, and especially to sit down and write an 800 word to 1,000 word story. That can be really daunting, and so we kind of pivoted and said, well, how can we make this more accessible? How can we make people feel more comfortable about sharing their stories? So while the website exists and you can look at it and read the blog posts that we've put up, we sort of turned our focus to Instagram, which is where we were finding a lot of our followers, and just posting prompts like, what is something that you miss right now, and just have people respond to it. And then follow up with people via DM and say, can you elaborate on this a little bit more and tell me more about this? Some of those people did. It's easier to text than it is to like sit down at the computer and type out a story. And so
it depends on who you are. I like the computer personally, but anyway.
I
think he's wonderful.
I'm totally with you there, but I think for somebody who doesn't necessarily identify as a writer or something like that, just texting somebody a response to something was kind of the way into it. And so we started getting responses from people that way, and so I would take snippets of that and feature them on the Instagram page. So really, if you go to our Instagram, that is the bulk of where the community stories have come from. So you can kind of scroll through the timeline and look to see the different stories that people shared there. But we did get a couple of posts for the blog as well.
Nice. What was your biggest takeaway from that project? Like, is there a particular story maybe that really stands out? Maybe something that you or somebody in your polycule shared that like was really memorable, or somebody in the community, or maybe just like, what was the value that you got from it? Did you learn something from it in going through the whole thing?
Yeah, so many things. The thing that comes immediately to mind is just how far we were able to reach with this project in the short time that we were all working on it. And so we got followers from all over the world. One of the people who wrote a blog post for us lives in South Africa, and it was really quite touching to email her back and forth as she was working on this post, and I was sort of helping her craft it, but really the story was already there. And just the way that she was talking about her loneliness and being a poly person in South Africa where there's not a large community there, and just realizing that there are folks all over the world that are going through this, and it just really it's something that makes the world feel both big and small at the same time, when you see the different people that you're reaching and you're connecting with people in different time zones and things like that. It's a very fulfilling kind of feeling to be able to help people share and feel less alone. And that's a lot of the responses that we were getting too, is people weren't necessarily sharing their stories, but they would DM us and say, like this really resonates with my experience, or like I feel less alone because of this. So thank you for posting. And like that in and of itself was just such a huge reward.
I love that. That's I gotta agree that's the best feeling, when I have people reach out and say something along those lines as well. Krista, thank you again for spending time with us. We're getting short on our time here, so I want to give you an opportunity to again tell us about the book club that you've got going on. Tell us where we can find out more information about you, about the book club, and yeah, we'll go with that. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm kind of all over the internet. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. You can find me there. You can find me through Poly in Place. But the book club, and I also wanted to make sure to plug our event, the thing that I mentioned before. So the event Polyamory and Publishing, we will be facilitating that event on September 25th. And so you can find more information about that on the Poly Pages website as well. We're going to have a great panel with Eve Rickert, who is the co-author of More Than Two, and the owner of Thorn Tree Press, who is supporting us in this book club project. And then we've also got M. Ellery, who wrote the amazing children's book, A Color Named Love, which I have right here. It's just it's so beautiful. I love it so much, and I'm really excited to talk with her, as well as Rachel Krantz, who's an investigative journalist and the author of a forthcoming memoir called Open. And so just really excited to chat with all of them and talk more about polyamory in the industry. And yeah, you can also sign up for the book club. So book club members will get free access to that panel on the 25th if you sign up ahead of time. There will be a recording of the event afterwards. And then, yeah, the book club, it starts in October. So we'll be starting with Polysecure. And we'll be reading that through the end of the year. Book club members will get access to a members only portion of our website where there will be prompts and things to think about to help guide your reading, as well as access to the community.
Awesome.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
That's right. We're taking off on a journey of learning. And if you want to join the book club, go to polypages.org/book club. Krista, again, I want to thank you so much for spending some time, for sharing some of your stories. We both agree that it's important for us to be on here sharing stories. So I appreciate the fact that you are doing what you've learned from some of those authors you've read, being vulnerable, sharing yours, and living unabashedly yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
And thank you, as always, to our live audience for tuning in. As a reminder, when we're live, you get no commercial interruptions, but the same can't be said for those podcast downloads. So if you want to avoid the commercial interruptions, be sure to catch us live Monday through Wednesday, 2:30 Pacific time, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, or sign up for Patreon where you get access to our commercial-free RSS feeds and support the show. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, wherever it is that you download your podcast if you haven't already. And please leave us a review. We'll really appreciate it. That's all we've got for you all today. Thank you one more time to you, Krista. Thank you, as always, for everybody tuning in. And until next time, till tomorrow.
Have a nice day!
Thank you for tuning in to the Practicing Polyamory podcast. Would you or someone in your polycule like to be a guest? Sign up at practicingpolyamory.com and join the conversation. Please support us by subscribing, liking, and following us on social media at Practicing Polya by clicking any of the affiliate links on our website or by subscribing at patreon.com/practicing